Let's jump into today's story. They say your wedding day should be the happiest day of your life, but for me, it wasn't. It was an absolute disaster, a catastrophe. I met Clara 3 years ago. She was stunning, intelligent, and had this infectious laugh that could melt even the toughest skeptic. From the moment I saw her, I was hooked. We had our ups and downs, just like any couple, but when I proposed, I truly believed we'd faced every challenge together. Turns out I was wrong. It all started 1 week before the wedding. I was at my friend Matt's apartment, unwinding after a long day. Matt's the kind of guy who's sometimes a little too honest, but he's loyal to a fault. Over a beer, he hesitated for a moment before saying, "James, there's something I think you should know." That kind of phrase is never followed by anything good. "What's going on?" I asked, setting my beer down. He rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding my gaze. "You sure about Clara, man?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" "Of course, I'm sure." He sighed. "All right, don't shoot the messenger, but—" He paused, clearly trying to find the right words. "I saw Clara last Friday at Charlie's bar. She wasn't alone." I laughed, more out of disbelief than anything else. "Matt, come on. She was probably just out with her friends." He shook his head. "That's what I thought too, until I saw her kissing some guy. And it wasn't a casual peck. It was a full-on, world-ending kind of kiss. At first, I couldn't believe him. I tried convincing myself Matt must have been mistaken, or that maybe Clara had a twin wandering around the city. But deep inside, something felt wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, Matt's words echoed in my head. She wasn't alone. Kissing some guy. A full-on, world-ending kind of kiss. It didn't make sense. Clara and I were happy, or at least I thought we were. But what if Matt wasn't wrong? What if the woman I was about to marry wasn't the person I believed her to be? The next morning, I decided to pay closer attention to the little things. The way she always tilted her phone screen away from me. The late-night texts she claimed were from work. The tension in her voice when I asked about her plans. One day, while she was in the shower, I grabbed her phone. My hands were trembling as I scrolled through her messages, but there was nothing suspicious. No incriminating texts, no calls from unknown numbers. Everything was too clean, almost suspiciously so. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The next time Clara mentioned going out, I decided to follow her. For the next few days, she stayed home. But 2 days before the wedding, she got dressed up more than usual. She wore a fitted dress, high heels, and flawless makeup. She twirled in front of the mirror, clearly pleased with how she looked. "Tomorrow's the day," she said, referring to the tradition where the groom can't see the bride the day before the wedding. "I'm staying at Sarah's tonight. We're looking at some wedding stuff and maybe grabbing a bite. I'll head to Sarah's after that." She gave me a quick kiss on the cheek before leaving. "Okay," I muttered, though my mind was already racing in a different direction, following the trail of suspicion. As soon as she left, I grabbed my jacket and followed her. She drove through the city, weaving through streets. Eventually, she pulled over to the side of a quiet neighborhood. My heart pounded as I watched her get out of the car and stand on the curb, as if waiting for someone. I waited, barely breathing, watching her every move. Then the man appeared. He approached her confidently, taller than me, wearing a dark jacket. I didn't recognize him. He greeted her with a smile, and before I knew it, they were kissing. It wasn't just a casual kiss. It was intense, the kind of kiss that made my stomach turn. I couldn't let it go unnoticed. My hand was shaking as I quickly pulled out my phone and snapped a few photos. The flash was dim, hidden in the dark of my car, but the pictures were clear, her lips against his, her eyes closed in passion. I felt sick, but I kept snapping pictures, making sure I had proof that I wasn't imagining this. They pulled apart, exchanged a few quick words, and got into her car. I immediately started my car and followed them. I tailed them for miles, my mind swirling in disbelief, until they finally pulled into a hotel parking lot. The building was tucked away on a side street, quiet and unassuming. It wasn't fancy, but it wasn't the kind of place you'd expect a couple to just hang out. They got out of the car and I stayed hidden behind a row of parked cars, watching them walk toward the hotel entrance. My stomach churned as I took out my phone again, snapping a few more pictures of them walking hand in hand. They leaned into each other as if they were the only two people in the world. I couldn't just let it go, not after what I had just witnessed. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I knew I couldn't ignore the truth any longer. I parked a bit further down and followed them into the hotel. Upon arriving at the front desk, the receptionist greeted me, and I took a deep breath before asking, "Can you tell me which room Clara Collins is in?" The receptionist frowned, glancing at his computer screen. "I'm sorry, sir, but we don't have any reservation under that name." My stomach sank, but I maintained my composure. "I mean the woman who just walked in a few minutes ago with the guy. What room are they in?" The receptionist's gaze shifted nervously. "I'm afraid I can't give you that information, sir." I leaned forward, lowering my voice as I fought to stay calm. "Look, I'm about to marry that woman, and I just saw her walk in here with another man. I need to know what room they're in." The receptionist hesitated, his eyes darting around the lobby, likely to ensure no one else could overhear. I can't. It's against policy to disclose guest information," he said, clearly uncomfortable. I took a deep breath, my frustration rising. "Please, I'm not here to cause any trouble. Just tell me what room they're in. I need to know." The receptionist sighed, glancing over his shoulder before leaning in a little. "Room 312, but please don't make a scene." I nodded quickly and forced a tight smile, walking away before he could change his mind. I made my way to the third floor, my thoughts racing. I stood outside their door, pressing my ear to the wood as muffled laughter and voices filtered through the walls. I could hear the man's low chuckle and Clara's soft voice. The sound twisted something deep within me, but I stayed still, absorbing every moment. They seemed so at ease, as though I didn't even exist. I couldn't just leave. I needed to hear more, needed to know what was going on between them. I quickly glanced down the hall, then back at the door. Without thinking, I walked to the front desk and booked the room next door. Room 311. I couldn't bear the idea of standing there outside their door, so close yet so far from the truth. Once I returned, I slipped into the new room quietly and leaned against the wall by the door, waiting for the sounds to continue through the thin walls. I could still hear the muffled laughter, unmistakable. I held my breath, trying to make sense of the chaos in my mind. I didn't want to know this. I shouldn't even be here, but I couldn't stop myself. Slowly, I opened the balcony door to step outside for a better view, hoping to catch a glimpse of them through the sliding doors of their room. But as soon as I stepped outside, I froze. I heard the unmistakable sound of their balcony door sliding open. My heart pounded as I rushed back inside, pressing my back against the wall as quietly as I could. I didn't want them to see me, didn't want to be caught. Through the thin wall between our rooms, I could hear them laughing again, followed by footsteps as they both stepped out onto their balcony. They stood there for a while, talking softly. Though I couldn't hear their words, I felt the weight of their presence. It felt like an eternity before they went back inside, and I finally exhaled. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know for sure. I looked down at the gap between the two balconies. It wasn't wide enough to stop me. My heart still raced, but I forced myself to move, creeping along the edge of the building. I jumped lightly, landing on their balcony without a sound. Slowly, I approached the sliding door, my hands trembling. I reached out and gently pushed it open, just enough to peer inside. In the dim light of the room, I saw them tangled in the sheets, kissing passionately. Their clothes began to come off, piece by piece, and a knot tightened in my chest. My world spun as I watched, unable to look away. In a panic, I pulled out my phone, trying to stay silent, not making a single noise. My breath hitched as I started recording, standing just behind the curtains, watching them oblivious to my presence. Every second felt like an eternity. I kept recording for about a minute, feeling both sick and numb, unsure of what to do next. Finally, I stepped back as quietly as I could, carefully jumping back onto my own balcony. My legs shook beneath me, and I stood there for a moment, my heart still pounding, trying to process everything I had just witnessed. I couldn't believe what was happening. Clara, the woman I was about to marry, was cheating on me, just 2 days before our wedding. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow, leaving me paralyzed and unable to comprehend the weight of what I had seen. She had been the one I trusted, the one I had planned my life with, yet here she was, intimately involved with another man. I drove home, the discovery pressing heavily on me. I knew she would be staying at Sarah's place tonight, but as I sat in the silence of our home all, All I could focus on was how to make her feel the pain I had endured. The rage inside me burned intensely, and the idea of her walking down the aisle in just 2 days, acting as if everything was fine, made my blood boil. I had to take control. I had to reveal everything. Everything she thought she could keep hidden from me. I craved revenge, and I was determined to get it. The day of the wedding came, and as the guests started gathering at the venue, the tension in the air was thick. Clara was there, along with the other guests, chatting and enjoying themselves. Gradually, the room quieted as everyone took their seats, waiting for the ceremony to begin. As the guests settled, I stood up. "Excuse me, everyone," I said, my voice cutting through the room, steady and clear. "Before we start the ceremony, I'd like to share something with all of you." All eyes turned to me, and for a brief moment, the entire room fell into a hushed silence. The atmosphere shifted, curiosity thick in the air. I took a deep breath, knowing exactly what was about to unfold. "I know you've all been eagerly anticipating the ceremony, but before we continue, I want to show you some of the most memorable moments Clara and I have shared," I continued, my voice surprisingly calm despite the storm raging inside me. "Our trips, our laughter, our love, all of it." A few people smiled, clearly thinking I was about to show something sweet and sentimental. The projector behind me flickered to life, and the first images appeared on the screen. Clara and I were smiling, hugging, laughing together on various trips. Pictures of what appeared to be a perfect couple. For a brief moment, I almost felt a twinge of guilt, almost. But that feeling quickly faded. Slowly, the photos changed. The next image appeared on the screen, and there she was, Clara, kissing another man. The room fell into stunned silence. Whispers rippled through the guests, and people exchanged confused looks, uncertain about what they were seeing. A few glanced at Clara, their faces filled with shock. Clara's face turned pale, her hand flying to her mouth as she gasped. Her eyes flickered between the screen and me, panic flashing across her face. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Then, without warning, the screen changed again. A video began to play, showing Clara and the man in her hotel room, unaware of my presence. The video captured them in bed, kissing and undressing. My stomach turned as I heard the sounds of their intimacy, sounds I never imagined I'd hear on the day I was supposed to marry her. The entire room went dead silent, then gasps erupted. Guests began to whisper, some standing in shock, others pointing, while some were too stunned to speak. The atmosphere shifted from confusion to anger. I heard voices muttering, accusing glances being exchanged. "What is this?" someone shouted. "Is this real? This is insane." Another voice rang out. Clara's face drained of color as she stood frozen, realizing what was happening. The color drained from her face and her hands trembled. The man she had been with, the one I had never known, was nowhere to be seen. But her betrayal was now exposed for all to witness. The truth hung heavily in the air, like a suffocating cloud. "James, what is this?" Clara finally stammered, her voice barely audible. "What are you doing?" "You've been caught, Clara," I said, my voice cutting through the chaos. "I'm done. The wedding's off. You've shown me exactly who you are, and I won't pretend anymore." She started to shake her head, but the damage had already been done. The room erupted into arguments, people shouting at Clara, at me. Some were angry with her, others in disbelief. But I could only stand there, feeling numb. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The truth was out, and nothing would ever be the same. Clara stood there trembling as the room descended into chaos. Her eyes were wide with disbelief, but I had no sympathy left for her. She had betrayed me, and no explanation could fix it now. "James, please let me explain," she pleaded, her voice cracking. But I couldn't listen anymore. The damage had been done. The guests were split, some furious with her, others still in shock. But I didn't care. The woman I had loved, the woman I was about to marry, was not the person I thought she was. I turned away, not wanting to look at her any longer. The wedding, which was supposed to be the happiest day of our lives, had turned into a nightmare. She was no longer the future I had imagined. Without a word, Clara turned and walked out. People tried to comfort her, but I remained motionless. There was no going back now. The truth had been revealed, and I was free. As the room emptied and the guests left, I felt a strange mix of relief and pain. The woman I had once trusted was gone, and so was the life I thought we would have. In the days that followed, I received messages of sympathy, but I wasn't interested. Clara was gone, and so was the life I had planned with her. It wasn't easy, but over time I moved on. The betrayal hurt, but what hurt more was the realization that I had ignored the signs. Still, I was free, and in the end, that was all that mattered. Thank you for watching.